let's just start by talking a little bit about what the original bridge plan was for this new interstate bridge and how it's kind of reared its ugly head up again.
Well, Barbara, one of the challenges we have is that the project proponents have been successful in convincing people it's about the bridge. And the new name, the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project, is a sign of how deceptive the whole effort is, because it is based directly on the Columbia River crossing, both on a legal and a technical sense, but that has been confirmed by the project staff, who are a set of consultants and staff from the two departments of transportation. They've described it as tweaking the old project, a revival of the old project.
And who are these two departments of transportation that we're talking about?
Oregon Department of Transportation and the Washington Department of Transportation. And one of the things, I was just talking to a legislator the other day, is that people who are participating in this process are not even clear who makes the decision, who has final authority. And I think this is also part of a strategy, is to keep things vague and confused, decision points unclear. But let me get back to what the project is. By calling it the Interstate Bridge Replacement Columbia River Crossing, you get the impression that it's about replacing the bridges, right? That's what it's called. But the project on which it's based, the crossing the river is 3,500 feet. The project's 5 miles. $90 million would have spent on demolishing the two existing bridges, one built in 1960 and one built in 1958, and $900 million on building a new bridge. But the total project cost was $3.6 billion. So the actual new bridges were only a third of the project. What was the remainder? Well, $1.77 billion was on freeway widening and new interchanges. $1.77 billion. So to call it the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project, to the extent it's the same as the Columbia River Crossing, which we all think it is deliberately misleading. People don't understand that on Hayden Island there'd be 16 lanes. What you'll hear is there's only 3 through lanes, but that's a sort of trick of implying that all the other merge lanes don't really carry traffic. There are images of the project on Hayden Island that are shocking to people because they've heard the phrase Interstate Bridge Replacement Project, and that's what they think the project is. But most of it is on interchanged construction and freeway widening. Now, there's one thing that seems to be emerging that is different, which is the project leadership is, and I'll use the word advisedly, paving the way to not have light rail as part of the project. Well, actually, there were multiple things that sank it, and the project actually began in 2004. So it's been 17 years since the project, it was coincident about the time I was elected to the Metro Council. And by the way, for your listeners, you live in a region that has a unique government, an elected regional government, which has very significant power over land use and transportation, as well as recycling and open spaces, natural areas, and visitor facilities. There's no other government like this in the United States that's directly elected. And they also are designated as a metropolitan planning organization under federal law. What does that mean? It means under federal law, they have the authority and power to make decisions on projects like this. So the project had these elements. One was to demolish and replace the existing bridges, build big interchanges at Columbia Boulevard and I think SR 500 in Washington State, widen the freeway on Hayden Island, and then provide a light rail crossing. And in order to pay for all that $3.6 billion was the original project cost, there would have to be tolls. And the tolls would be $5 each way during probably permanently. That's what was modeled. So the big controversy was, depending on which side of the river you were on, was tolls and opposition to tolls and light rail. And there are the difference now between Clark County and Vancouver and the rest of the metro region politically is diminishing greatly. So there are a lot of alternatives, and we should talk about them, that are cheaper, smarter. And one of the things that's maybe unique about my view was, speaking as a progressive, I thought we should not waste money any more than we waste resources. Why are we going to spend now, the project maximum cost is $4.8 billion, to shave a few minutes of commute time from people living in Battleground? Is that really the highest priority of the state of Oregon, is to shave a few minutes off the commute time? And when I say, people say, well, that's your opinion. Most of the criticisms that were generated of the Columbia River Crossing came from their own study documents. which we all learn no one reads. No one reads those. And I have to say, my experience as an elected official is many elected officials don't read more than 1 or 2 pages on any subject. So they hear talking points, and those are the talking points are, well, we have to deal with congestion, the bridges are going to fall down, they're old, and so on. Of course, no one's talking about all the rest of the projects that aren't bridges. So, yes, the opponents of the project on this side of the river believed that there were many alternatives, and that is still true. When the project began, by the way, so Barbara, my background on transportation project goes back to 1980s. It was my idea that we could come up with a land use alternative or explore a land use alternative to the proposed West Side Bypass, which would have been a twin for I-205, but through Washington County. That alternative was actually adopted. Keith Bartholomew did most of the work at Thousand Friends on that, but it was pretty spectacular to say, no, the reason we drive is how we arrange things and how things are separated, and if we give more choices and a more integrated system, we don't need to build it. And that Metro and the Department of Transportation actually adopted that alternative. That was remarkable. But we seem to have unlearned that lesson. So that was my first effort. Then when I was on Metro, subsequently I was also involved in the transportation planning rule at the state level. Then on Metro, I was on the advisory committee for the Selwood Bridge, which is another overbuilt project of $250 million, the Orange Line, Columbia River Crossing. And subsequently, I worked with Lynn Peterson, ironically, on implementing California's law to reduce driving, which is part of their strategy for greenhouse gas reduction, which is just reduce driving. So I have, 33 years of experience on transportation planning and projects. This project exemplifies everything that's wrong with our approach in the United States and underscores the need to not just fix the project, but fix the way we think and fix the Department of Transportation. When you reduce travel time, you get more driving. And how big of an effect is that? Well, there's been a debate over that. Not a debate that it exists. It's now called induced travel, or some people call it induced demand. But when that happens, it's between 1/3 and 2/3 of the additional capacity gets used up very quickly. So the promised relief doesn't happen. And you pointed out that they're called choke points, at the Rose Quarter, where there's an $800 million project proposed. If you were to build that project and then you build the freeway widening across the river, which is, again, I try not to call it the bridge, but the freeway widening, then, of course, between the Broadway area and Killingsworth, you'd have another, quote, choke point. So you're just endlessly widening freeways. No one likes congestion. I've been a bike commuter for 30 years. So when I'm in a car in congestion, it drives me crazy. But, how much money you're going to spend on an ineffective solution. So it's not about saying, no one, I think, believes, even who support the project, well, if we do this, it'll be fixed. Now, some people say that, but no one in the project itself, the proponents never claim that. They say it will save a few minutes during rush hour. So the question is, if you're going to spend $4.8 billion to do different things, deal with safety or renewing bridges or whatever it is, would you spend it there? Is that the best use of money? And we're really talking about spending up to $5 billion to take a few minutes off a commute during rush hour.